Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, this is going to be the Zero to Hero episode on the Smite Devouring Orb Void Knight. So, if you don't know, there is a huge rework incoming for Sentinel. So, Volatile Reversal is getting the axe and pretty much getting removed from the game and then getting replaced with a completely new skill. So, thankfully, we actually have a lot of the teasers that we're supposed to have for Sentinel right about now. So I can make a pretty good guess on how builds are going to function in the new patch. A good example here is Orbital Devouring Orb is going to be automatically cast while you're moving if you grab a node specifically for it. And then, of course, as well, you can also grab Sigils of Hope, which will be renamed into Symbols of Hope, which is also automatically cast. So remember that as you're watching this footage and stuff, that like you won't have to cast as much as I will. You'll just simply have to cast your Anomaly, your Healing Hands, and your Smite, and you're good to go because you're probably going to swap out Javelin for Sigils next patch. I'm just using Javelin because not only am I a speed nut, I just like using Javelin because it just helps me move through monoliths very quickly. Because, the biggest problem with these Zero to Hero runs is they just take time, and I just don't like spending that much time. So I just try to zoom as fast as possible. But if you're not aware of how this build works, the idea is we're utilizing Devouring Orb. Devouring Orb is a pretty good skill for clear and for single target. There is a node that makes it so that it can orbit around you. So you're casting it on cooldown and it's orbiting around you. Then there is a node that allows the orbiting devouring orbs to hit enemies. And this pretty much turns it into Blade Vortex from Path of Exile. So they just fall around you and they do massive hits, and you can make them do very large amounts of damage because of this. And you can also as well make them shoot out little orbs that will explode on contact and create void rifts as well. And all of that, it ends up being a very large amount of single target damage on top of having a lot of clear. Also as well, each orb will also create an AoE whenever you kill something with anything, by the way, with any skill or anything like that. Cool. Next skill that we're using, Smite. Smite is just for extra single target. It can be converted to void. We can do a lot of damage with it. Pretty much good to go. Nothing too crazy. Just cast as many as possible. And both of these combined lead you to having above average DPS. I actually went and looked back on the footage and stuff like that. This is actually above average DPS already. And we don't even know what the new passive tree is going to look like. We don't even know what all of the new stuff is going to look like. Now, I will say this version of the build probably isn't going to have synergy with Volatile Reversal, because it seems like Volatile Reversal has synergy with the orbs that you put on the ground, which is definitely not what this build is, right? But that's fine. Just being able to automatically cast your Devouring Orbs while moving is great. One thing to note though, while on single target, because of the way that you want to be DPSing down a single target and being sitting right next to them and stuff like that, you are going to want to just cast your Devouring Orb then, because you're not going to be moving as often. That is the only downside to that node, is you still have to cast on single target, but that's really not that big of a deal, right? Or you can stutter step, but that will reduce your smite DPS. But yeah, that's cool. There's also some other buffs that are coming this way. Another thing that's buffing this a little bit is the cooldown recovery speed node that's being put at the top of Void Knight. There's a node that's going to be coming next patch. It gives you 24% increased cooldown recovery speed and some, I think, vitality or something like that. And that ends up being a lot of extra DPS for Devouring Orb, because remember, the more cooldown recovery speed that we snag, the better. Now, one thing I will note, in this footage, in the gameplay that you'll see eventually after, I start rolling through the leveling and all that, I was planning on running a Peak of the Mountain setup with a healing setup with Healing Hands, but I never ended up dropping a Peak of the Mountain, and then I ended up just crit capping different with a different way anyways, and I ended up just having good enough damage to crit cap that way anyway. So it turns out you can just ignore Peak of the Mountain. You don't have to actually run it. You just need a Rune Dagger. Pretty much you just need a Rune Dagger and a crit catalyst, and all of a sudden you're capped. This isn't that big of a deal. Rune Daggers have a low amount of flat on them, but they have 4% base crit. They can also have cast speed rolled on them, even though they're a dagger. And this is important because Sure, it has a low amount of flat, but it helps you crap your crit very easily, and you get a bunch of flat from your vitality on also your gear. And eventually, once you swap into Sigils of Hope, you'll also have a lot of flat from that. So you're just going to have a very large amount of flat on your affixes, like vitality and stuff like that. Just remember, you are vitality stacking. You want as much as vitality as possible. Not only does it help you with your HP, it also helps you getting 2 flat void per point for your Devouring Orb. Ends up being a lot of extra damage because of that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. How I feel about the build so far. Uh, I am going to be skipping leveling this time around for the footage and all that. That is mainly because I've already done a leveling run on, Bleed Hammered In, like Bleed Ignite Hammered In. So if you want to see detailed leveling of this character, I'll leave a link down in the description. I am going to cut it this time around. So, watch that and respec it around level 40. That's about like when you'll respec into this build, is around level 40 when you get to like monos and stuff like that. When you get access to smite and all that, there'll still be progression planners in the description. But if you want like a detailed leveling guide, like I've already leveled Hammered In so many times, I don't want to look at it anymore. With all that being said, if you haven't already, I would heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting me. It's the best way to show me that you want more content like this on YouTube. Trust me, every single like, every single comment, everything helps, because it helps the algorithm push out, videos to other people as well who are in dire need of a decent last Epoch build. So let's go in game and talk about the build more in detail, shall we? Just to give you guys a quick look of what the leveling will look like right before you swap into it. This is going to be the Hammered In. You're going to get here, then you're going to go and get all your passes and your idle slots, and then after this, what you're going to do is you're going to respec into Devouring Orb plus Smite. Now that we've respecialized, now we can talk about this. So early on, it's a little questionable, mainly just because it's not that comfy right now, as it's a lot of casting right now. We don't have as much cast speed, but later on, as we get more and more damage and stuff like that, it'll feel a lot better. The biggest problem in the footage that you're seeing right now is I'm running a staff from like level 20 or something like that. And you definitely want the biggest, fattest staff you could possibly get until you get enough crit to crit cap, i.e. using a rune dagger or something like that. So I would suggest using a two-handed staff with cast speed and spell damage or void damage until you get access to a rune dagger and a crit catalyst. So make sure to do that. Definitely just play with the staff for a bit, right? It'll make you feel a lot better. Yeah. Another thing as well, remember, this was me trying to play with healing effectiveness instead of play with leech. What you can do is actually just grab the leech nodes at the bottom of Void Knight instead of going for what I went for, which I'll make sure to have in the final planer, of course. I was experimenting. I was trying to do just healing, and it worked fine. It actually worked pretty fine, and the healing ended up actually being pretty strong in endgame as well, on top of all of our leech and stuff like that. But definitely a mistake on my part. I really thought that I'd be swapping into Peak of the Mountain, but after 7 Lightless Arbor keys, I didn't end up dropping one, even though it was like a 40% chance. So I just said fuck it, and I just crit capped in a different way, right, with a rune dagger. Now, this is after we got access to some gear for the character. As you can see, a lot of extra damage than before. Make sure to have your Devouring Orbs hit the boss. So remember, as they rotate, they will do hit damage, and this hit damage is very important for your endgame single target DPS, because your Devouring Orbs end up doing almost as much damage as your Smite does easily. Here's our second monolith. Now, this is what it looks like when we actually have access to all of our skills, our anomaly, and all that. It also, this is what it looks like when we actually have access to a staff that has actual damage on it. I actually luckily rolled into a cast speed and spell damage percentage moon staff, which is a lot of flat at this point, right? One thing I didn't really do early on is I didn't focus too hard on vitality. That was a mistake. Try to get as much vitality on your gear as humanly possible. It is like the biggest affix. Also as well, spell void percentage and spell flat is an the hybrid affix is pretty strong as well early on. So both of those can easily carry you very quickly if you just end up with, like, let's say 50 vitality by like level 60 or something like that on your gear. Literally just try to slap vitality on your chest. Like, that's all you really care about early on is vitality on your gear, because that flat on top of all the percent damage that you can get access to on gear helps out immensely. Here's our Rye. Actually, not that bad of a Rye. I actually went and looked because, thankfully, because of the way that, like, I've been literally doing hundreds of these zero to hero level runs, right? I'm exaggerating, but still, I can go look at all of my Rye runs, Rye kills, and I can be like, oh, wow, this is actually faster than average. Yes, this is faster than average Rye kill than I normally would have at this point, which is wonderful. Now here's our third mono, just a little bit extra scaling and stuff like that. One thing I didn't really notice until later on was I was lacking a lot of movement speed here. Unfortunately, because of the way that this build works, because you kind of want to like walk into enemies to hit them with the devouring orb, like, blade vortex stuff. Because remember, when they hit enemies, they will deal damage, and then of course they do the AoE when they kill stuff. Essentially, you want to be walking into the enemies, like you want to be walking over them, and healing hands helps out a lot with this because it's like shield charge but not shit, which is great. But the problem is I didn't build that much movement speed early on. It was just accidental. I just didn't end up with it. One thing to note, this build does not use any uniques at all early on, and all of the uniques it would use are uniques that you don't get access to till much later from bosses and stuff like that. The only like real unique that you could get from like a Rune of Ascendance that you'd actually want is like a Ravenous Void, but like get good luck trying to get one of those from Runes of Ascendances, right? So one thing I would suggest is use them on boots. Get a decent pair of movement speed boots, either a Terrace Path with like movement speed percentage or life. That's good to go. I should have done that. I did not do that this run because I was unaware of like if I needed uniques or not for this build. So cool. Or get the Storm boots, the one that gives you like 35% movement speed or something like that. Bloody Exiles are just fine too, but eventually you want like a pair of boots with like cooldown and HP on them, and eventually, right, and movement speed. So you're gonna swap out of the unique boots. You can also use uniques on like rings. Rings are actually not that bad of slots early on because you can either get the crit ring or you can get the movement speed ring. Here's my Lagan. This is actually a pretty average Lagan. One thing to note, I did get lucky and I dropped 2 coral rings. Coral rings can roll with like 6 vitality on the implicit, and that ends up being 12 flat, or 12 flat for your devouring orb and 6 flat for your smite, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up very quickly, especially if you get double coral rings with like spell damage on them. So you should look out for some coral rings and stuff like that. Definitely look out for some coral rings with some good stats on them. Definitely will boost your DPS a bit. Here's Dragon, very quick Dragon. Simply, since we're killing all of these enemies, all the void rifts that we're creating with Devouring Orb end up just kind of like stacking on the boss, which makes this a lot quicker than it normally would be, right? And of course, we can sit inside of him and have our Devouring Orbs hit him multiple times. As you can see, we're actually doing decent damage to him already. So, and I also managed to get Armor Shred as well and hit. Now, here's our first 90 mono. This is when I was trying to swap into crit with like a decent weapon and stuff like that. This was a mistake. Don't swap into crit this way. Only swap into crit when you get a rune dagger and a catalyst. Do not use a catalyst plus a wand or whatever. Get a rune dagger. Either use a staff with percent damage on it or get a rune dagger. There's no in between. Don't fuck around with anything. Get a big, fat, meaty staff. Use that. Get a rune dagger later. If you really need help getting a rune dagger, you can use your prophecies. If you're MG, you can go buy one, or you can just simply make a rule on your filter to show white rune daggers and just get like a crit and crit multi one, and then get a crystal skull catalyst as well, and you're good to go. Either way, whatever you got to do, get a rune dagger, get like a either that or just run a staff until then, because trust me, it's not worth being half and half like I'm doing right now. It's so much better just to go for just as much crit as humanly possible or go for the staff. Here's the Spirits of Fire fight. This is actually really annoying for your build, because you don't have a build that can like hit all three enemies at once easily. So this fight is just going to be a little difficult for you. So just kill them one by one and just deal with it that way. It's not too easy, but it is manageable. Simply save your evade for when you get the necrotic bombs thrown at you and stuff like that. Other than that, it's like fine. Herat is as easy as it always is. Unfortunately, this Herat decided that he's going to be immune while also attacking at the same time, which is unfortunate. Uh, Quick tip with Herat, he will only dash in the direction that you're standing. So if you stand in a specific direction, he will dash that way. And it helps out a lot with maintaining where he's going. So here's our first Harbinger. Uh, right now, the DPS isn't as good as it could be. I went back and looked at all of my Harbinger kills, and I will say the female Harbingers were more difficult than the male ones, mainly just because the female ones are definitely melee anti-friendly, and that's mainly because the slice that she does, that void slice, ends up hitting you twice every single time if you're standing within a very specific range of her. Unfortunately, currently the Harbinger attacks, they multi-hit if you're standing at a specific distance away from them, kind of like, you know, an inch away from them where you want to be with Devouring Orb. So definitely try to hug the Harbingers, sit right on top of them. Do not sit like a little away from them. Either sit on top of them or do not be near them at all. Here's our first empowered mono. I put on some movement speed gear here at this point. Now you can see what it looks like when you actually have movement speed gear. And let me tell you, it's amazing when you actually have movement speed gear. Oh, it's so much better. As you can see, like pretty much automatically casting Devouring Orbs enemies will make this feel a lot better, as we won't have to actually cast Devouring Orb anymore. So that's like a lot of casting that I won't need to do anymore. So all I have to do is just maintain my buffs, maintain my anomaly, like and dash around with smite and stuff like that. It should feel good this way. After the buff, this build should actually be way better and very close to like a 1-2 button playstyle. Of course, on single target, you still have to manually cast your Devouring Orbs, but you know, you should be fine. I will state at this point, though, of the character, I'm a little bit squishier than I would like to be at this point. So make sure to try to focus on HP a little bit more than I did here, because I am definitely too squishy for this as it stands. Now here is our second Harbinger. This is when I swap into the Rune Dagger setup, get the Leech, get some HP on my gear. This is when the build starts feeling much better. As you can see, I can just kind of just face tank him and not really care. I'm literally just going to disrespect the Harbinger of Chaos here. Like literally, I don't even care if he puts me down to 400 HP. I'm just going to sit on top of them and try to DPS him down as quickly as possible. As you can see, the DPS is actually very respectable at this point, considering this is maybe like at most 5 hours into the run at this point. Feels very good to be able to do this early on. Now, in my never-ending campaign to show you guys how much HP that Harbingers have versus like an Oribus here. Oribus has like, I think like 1,000,000 HP or something like that. Boom. That easy. So here's the Harbinger of Treason. I remember this boss being more annoying than it should have been. And I think it's just because I was trying to do this weird thing where I stand and make sure the Devouring Orbs hit the target. But I learned later that if you just hug their nut sack, their hitbox is big enough to be hit by the Devouring Orb anyways. And also as well, I was very paranoid of getting double hit by the Harbingers of Treason Slash, because I've died to it enough times to not like it. So definitely worth playing a little chicken here. So don't feel bad for taking your time. Seriously, just take your time. Like, it's not a race. Honestly, it is a race then, but like, why the fuck are you watching this video, right? Like, there are better builds you can be playing right now if that's what you care about. Uh, but yeah, seriously though, you do want to just take your time with these. Like that void AoE under your feet for some reason, like I don't know why that exists, but it does so much damage currently, and it sucks. It sucks. Another Oribus, more corruption pushing. It is a blood Oribus, so you have to be a little bit more careful with these because those blood orbs do a very large amount of damage. But once the blood orbs go away, you can go back to DPSing the boss, which isn't that big of a deal. Here's some 200 corruption gameplay. Like I said, this gameplay is going to be a lot better next patch, as Devouring Orb is going to be on autocast, and so will our, we won't be running Javelin, we'll be running Sigils, but I will be making an updated planer for that, so keep in mind for that when I make like a big Sentinel video. I do actually plan on making a giant Google Doc on builds, so be ready for that. That'll be where the updated version of this build will be once we actually get updated planners and stuff. Thankfully, since the patch notes are coming out on the 11th, we might end up getting a better planner. Like, we might end up getting the planner updated, like the LE Tools planner updated by the time that, of course, 1.2 comes out, which means I can actually give you the updated version of the build. Here's the Harbinger of Ash. This one took a little bit longer than I would like it to be. I'm pretty tanky for most of his attacks. The biggest problem is that damage over time and the necrotic pool on top of you at the same time is enough to make me a little squeamish because, I've been killed by it so many times. So I just have to be absurdly careful about it because, like, unfortunately, with the way that the Harbingers work, you're not going to die because you get hit by one thing. You're going to die because you get hit by 4 things at once while also, standing in a dot pool. So definitely, definitely pay attention to where you're standing. Trust me. But of course, that doesn't matter. Thankfully, our build does enough damage and is tanky enough that we can just deal with it. But whenever he puts the necrotic dot pool down, you just got to run away. Unfortunately, it's just how it is. Stay out of the boulders AoEs, man. Oh, those boulders, they suck so much. But yeah, here is the Harbinger of Ashdown. That's number 5. Lamel, I'm dumb. That was actually Harbinger number 4. So Harbinger of War here is actually number 5. So unfortunately, because of the way that the Lady Harbingers work and they like to do like the double hits and stuff like that, essentially you're just playing kind of a game of keep away a little bit. You definitely don't want to just stand there and tank stuff. Although you can tank the dashes here, like you can tank the dashes and like the fire AoEs, but you definitely can't tank the double hits that she likes to do, like the Void Slash and stuff. So you just want to like Rango with the Tango with her. Unfortunately, you're kind of like forced to play chicken with her and just try to DPS her down. You could technically kill her just by, walking around her and by using Devouring Orb. That is a viable option. You can throw down Javelin too for like why not? Sorry, God, I'm so tired. I've been working so much. But yeah, definitely one of the more difficult Harbingers for sure. Definitely. But yeah, Harbinger of War down. Now, of course, it's the time like it is for every video. This is where the boss rushing portion of the video starts. So here is the Harbinger of Pride, the easiest Lady Harbinger. Another shade of Oribus for more corruption. Some quick 300 corruption gameplay just to show what the build looks like at 300 corruption. This is about when I've been getting a lot of upgrades. One thing I did actually land early on is a +4 to Devouring Orb helmet on a good base, meaning I could actually invest 4 points into getting the additional Void Rift area, which feels really good, mind you. So getting a +4 to Devouring Orb utilizing the new runes next patch with the Runes of Redemption and Runes of Havoc is definitely going to be something on your bucket list for this build, because getting access to that 80% AoE and then getting AoE on your gloves and then getting AoE in your amulet, all of that combined is going to lead to a very buttery smooth Devouring Orb build, as having as much area as possible is going to just make it feel so good. Trust me, you want as much area as possible with this build eventually. 7th Harbinger down. 8th Harbinger down. Here's the 9th Harbinger, the other Harbinger of Defilement. I don't know why there's two of them called Defilement, but whatever. Another quick Orbis to push us to 340 Corruption. Here is the Harbinger of Destruction, number 10. So we're going to be talking about the build now. So, clear for the build. That's definitely an S. Like, you're never going to beat a Devouring Orb in clear unless you're playing very specific things. Devouring Orb just feels so good, especially next patch when they automatically cast for you. And then, of course, you can scale area, you can scale damage. Devouring Orb's going to feel very good next patch, trust me, from what we've seen so far. Unless if they nerf it for some reason. I don't know. I don't know why you'd nerf Sentinel when you're supposed to be buffing them, especially with the lack of volatile reversal, right? So cool. That's going to be great. Survivability. This build is squishier than your average Sentinel build, so watch out. It's not as tanky as you'd like it to be. Even at 3,400, you still end up feeling super squishy because you have no DR whatsoever in existence. So yeah, have fun with that. Then for single target, it is actually above average on single target. It's like 2-minute 20 for a Harbinger at 340 corruption on top of course, the boss, the Monolith boss, the Reign of Dragons boss. And that is way faster than average because average is 3 to 4 minutes. 2 minutes is a good build, and less than that is an amazing build. So it's good without all the buffs. So that's really good, by the way. So here we are in game with character. Let's go over skills. So for Devouring Orb, first time we're going to take Dark Moon. We want them to orbit around us so we can bring them along with us. Also as well, that gives us access to Cosmic Impact, which will make us do 80 void damage on impact. That's a lot of flat damage to start out with, and you also get the 2 void flat per vitality. Then also as well, 5 points into collision for the massive 200% more damage for the Devouring Orb hit. This allows you to walk through enemies and have them die, which is great. We grab all the way up here, Hull Orb into Abyssal Emission and then Chaotic Torrent. This will give us a bajillion extra hits and will give us a lot of extra just scaling in general, which is really good for us. Lots of extra hits. 5 points in a Rift Collar because this will apply to everything, if I'm not mistaken. This will apply to everything, so you get 50% pen from that, which is great. Then 4 points into Abyssal Expanse. Abyssal Expanse is what you grab when you want area, and World Rot is what you'd want to grab if you want more single target. And that is pretty much it. Now, if you do not have the +4, don't worry, just take out Abyssal Expanse. It's a little bit less AoE, but it'll still feel fine. Just if you do get plus levels, that's definitely where you're putting them because AoE, AoE is so good. Finger looking good. Then for Smite, you're just your stereotypical single target Smite setup. Like you've seen it 20 billion times at this point, probably. Like it's really hard to go wrong with this, right? Like I literally don't have to tell you this. It's so hard to do this wrong right now. Then we also have Anomaly here. Anomaly is your bitch basics generic utility setup. We want the crit. We want to make a bubble on us so we get the crit, and then we get the cast speed for it. We get the cooldown recovery speed for a Devouring Orb, and then eventually you get some leech and stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. Anomaly is not too crazy of a skill right now, unfortunately. Like it's just good for that. Now you can grab Mark of Rot for 100% increased void damage taken when you use Anomaly. You'll have to dump some points probably in like the crit or something like that. I doubt this node is going to stay in its current state considering that they're removing volatile reversal. Maybe I'll be wrong. We'll see. We'll definitely see, right? And that's pretty much it for Anomaly. Stereotypical healing hand setup for movement. We're just using it for movement. We're also having it cast on our Smite just to heal us. It's not that big of a deal. We don't have that much healing effectiveness. It's just mainly just to sustain ourselves, even though we're sacrificing our life with sacrifice. Cool. Then Javelin. Javelin's just mobility. Mainly, we're just using the Javelin Surprise Initiative to have mobility in monoliths on top of healing hands. And then, healing with a Banner of Restoration. And of course, as well, the smite stuff for extra single target. It is actually a lot of extra smites. Like, it's like a smite at 0.8, so it's like an extra cast of smite every second. If we have 100% cast speed, it's like maybe 3 casts, and then we can get a 4th cast by doing it that way. So that's all good. That's all good to go. All that combined is good. And that's pretty much it for the skills. That will be swapped out for Sigils of Hope next patch, but right now Sigils of Hope aren't worth dropping Javelin right now. But like once they're automatically cast, Sigils of Hope would be so much better. But that's pretty much it for the skills. Let's talk about the passives that are important. So for passives that are important, nothing too crazy. This node's really good as it does just give you 10% of your missing health as HP, which is wonderful. 5 points to grab Healing Hands, but then everything else into Void Knight, mainly because of this node for a bunch of crit multi. You want to beeline all of the Echo stuff. That'll make your clear feel really good. Beeline Singular Purpose for a bunch of extra percent increased void damage. Then also as well, Eternal Form. After that, definitely go into the movement speed early on. You want as much movement speed as possible with this build early on because it helps you run into mobs with the Devouring Orb hits and allows you to clear faster. So movement speed is good. Like it's always good, obviously, but definitely movement speed. Then of course, like this leech is very important as well. I did not grab this early on when I was trying to level and stuff like that because I was going to go with the Peak of the Mountain, but we ended up realizing that Peak of the Mountain wasn't the worth to go, right? So we just ended up just going for the leech instead. So make sure to grab this early on. I'll make sure to like put it in the final planner. And that's going to be it for the character today. That's going to be it for the build, I think. Oh, wait. Oh my God. I'm so dumb. I'm so tired. I'm so sorry. Actually, no, we're not done. Let's talk about gear real quick. Mandatory gear, nothing mandatory. Before you go into monoliths, use a 2-handed staff with spell damage percent and maybe void damage percent or cast speed. Either of those, you're good to go. Then eventually, once you get a rune dagger, swap into a rune dagger, cast speed, crit chance, shred, good to go. Make sure it's 4% crit. Then offhand, crit chance, crit multi with a crystal skull or any base crit catalyst. Good. Then you can crap your crit very easily that way. Then that's pretty much it for mandatory items, quote unquote. Everything else is not mandatory. Although coral rings are pretty good. Helmet here, I did get like this is pretty much your perfect helmet other than like getting HP instead of endurance. Like this is literally your perfect helmet. I dropped a perfect helmet. Sometimes it happens, man. The spell crit, cast speed, HP, eventually like 2 other affixes like crit multi and then like resistance or something like that. You can also put frailty here. Chest here, vitality. You definitely want vitality everywhere you can possibly shove it. And then the spell percent void and the spell flat. It's just a very good affix for us. And then HP eventually. And then it's on the apocalypse plate, but you definitely want the .dr chest. Then rings here, spell damage, void damage, HP, resistance on a coral ring, pretty good. Or a silver ring if you want to go faster. And same thing with the other side. This belt, we got really lucky from a nemesis. Void percent damage, mana regen, HP, perfect belt, other than like maybe being on the armor base. Gloves here, cast speed, crit multi, crit chance, HP, and eventually either armor shred, frailty sealed, or like HP, double HP. Definitely you want to get a Ravenous Void eventually, as it does give you 10 vitality, which is just a lot of damage. And of course, Ravenous Voids are pretty good as well, so cool. Boots here, cooldown recovery speed. Definitely want cooldown recovery speed eventually on the belt, but like I got this. I'm not gonna not use it, right? So cooldown recovery speed, vitality, movement speed, HP. Definitely want exalted movement speed instead of vitality, but like whatever, right? Relic here, cast speed, crit chance or crit multi, endurance percent, HP, or you run resistance there as well on a better base too. Then for idols, you can use percent void damage when you skill echoes. That's good. You can also use percent damage with smite. That's okay. And then everything else is like resistance and like HP. That's pretty much it for idols. And now that's pretty much it for the build. With all that being said, this has been Dread, off to go do something else. Bye.